Today is Friday, July 17th, 2026, and today is National Tattoo Day, which is a day dedicated to making permanent decisions. Hopefully, after giving them a little more thought than, yeah, that seems like a good idea. And as I was researching today's stories, I noticed they all had something in common. Each one left a lasting mark. One changed the way buildings are cooled. One became the most famous theme park on Earth. And one proved that even rivals can leave history behind, if only for a moment. Welcome to Wait, That's Random, This Day in History. I'm C.L. Burns, voice actor, audiobook narrator, and someone increasingly convinced that history is mostly people improvising with confidence. On July 17, 1902, engineer Willis Carrier designed what is widely considered the first modern air conditioning system. Ironically, he wasn't trying to make people more comfortable. He was trying to solve a printing problem. A publishing company in Brooklyn was struggling because humidity kept changing the size of the paper. When the paper expanded or contracted, the colored inks no longer lined up correctly on the page. Carrier realized that if he could control both temperature and humidity, he could solve the problem. And he did. His system stabilized the air inside the building, allowing the presses to produce consistent, high-quality printing. Comfort was simply a fortunate side effect. Of course, people quickly realized that if air conditioning could make a factory more comfortable, it could also make offices, stores, movie theaters, and eventually homes much more pleasant places to spend time. It's hard to overstate how much that invention changed everyday life. Entire cities and hot climates expanded because people could finally live and work comfortably year-round. Shopping malls became destinations during the summer. Movie theaters advertised refrigerated air as a reason to come inside. Even modern computers and data centers rely on carefully controlled cooling systems that trace their roots back to Carrier's original idea. It's fascinating that one of history's most influential inventions began because someone wanted ink to dry correctly. And speaking of places designed to make people happy, our next story had one of the roughest opening days imaginable. And somehow, it became one of the greatest success stories in entertainment history. On July 17, 1955, Disneyland welcomed invited guests, members of the press, and a nationwide television audience for its grand opening. It should have been a perfect day. Instead, it became legendary for all the wrong reasons. Counterfeit tickets meant thousands more people entered the park than expected. Temperatures climbed over 100 degrees. Freshly poured asphalt hadn't completely hardened, causing some women's high heels to sink into the walkways. A plumber strike left many drinking fountains unavailable. Food quickly ran short. Traffic backed up for miles. Several rides experienced breakdowns before the day was over. The media nicknamed it Black Sunday. Most people would assume an opening day like that would become a cautionary tale. Instead, it became little more than an interesting footnote. Disney learned from every mistake. The very next day, Disneyland opened to the paying public, and the operation quickly became smoother. Today, more than 500 million people have visited Disneyland since those chaotic first hours. Sometimes success isn't about getting everything right the first time. Sometimes it's about refusing to let the first day define the story. And our final story reminds us that even during one of the tensest periods in modern history, people can still find common ground. On July 17, 1975, something extraordinary happened 140 miles above the Earth. An American Apollo spacecraft and a Soviet Soyuz spacecraft met in orbit, docked together, and their commanders shook hands through an open hatch. Today, that might not sound especially remarkable, but in 1975, the United States and the Soviet Union were locked in the Cold War. For decades, the space race had been exactly that, a race. Each nation wanted to prove its technology, its scientists, and even its political system were superior. The first satellite, the first human in space, the first moon landing. Every milestone became another point on the scoreboard. So why decide to work together? Both countries realized that if spacecraft from different nations were ever going to share space safely, they needed a way to dock with one another. If astronauts were ever stranded, or future international missions became possible, they couldn't afford to have incompatible spacecraft. The Apollo-Soyuz test project became a chance to prove cooperation was possible. When Apollo Commander Tom Stafford and Soyuz Commander Alexei Leonev shook hands in orbit, it became one of the defining images of the era. The mission lasted less than 2 days. Its symbolism has lasted for decades. Many historians see it as the beginning of a new chapter in space exploration. Without Apollo-Soyuz, it's difficult to imagine later partnerships like Shuttle, Mir, or even today's International Space Station. Sometimes history moves forward because competitors beat each other. Sometimes it moves forward because they decide to work together. And looking back across today's stories, they all started with remarkably different goals. One engineer wanted to solve a printing problem. One dreamer wanted to build the happiest place on Earth. And 2 rival nations discovered they could accomplish more together than apart. That brings us to someone who spent a lifetime disappearing into completely different worlds. Born on July 17, 1935, Donald Sutherland became one of the most respected and versatile actors of the last half-century. Unlike many movie stars, he was never known for playing the same character over and over again. Instead, he became known for becoming someone entirely different every time the cameras rolled. He could be funny, intimidating, warm, villainous, or quietly heartbreaking. From MASH to Ordinary People, from The Dirty Dozen to The Hunger Games, his career stretched across 6 decades and more than 190 films and television roles. I've always admired actors like Donald Sutherland. You recognize the face immediately, but somehow every character feels like a completely different person. That's a rare talent. But looking back across today's stories, I kept thinking about how often great ideas begin by solving surprisingly ordinary problems. Keep paper from warping. Create a place where families could spend a happy day together. And figure out how 2 spacecraft could safely connect in orbit. None of those goals were meant to change the world, yet every one of them did. Anyway, after today's walk through history, I kind of want to find an old movie with Donald Sutherland and watch it in a nice air-conditioned room. But before I go, I'll leave you with these words from Walt Disney himself. Disneyland will never be completed. It will continue to grow as long as there is imagination left in the world. If you'd like to hear more of my work, audiobooks, or other projects I've somehow gotten myself involved in, you can find everything over at waitthat'srandom.com. I'm C.L. Burns, and honestly, thank you for spending a little time being curious with me. I'll see you tomorrow.